Ladies and gentlemen and brethren, good evening and welcome to this evening's Solomon Live. Before I begin, I'd like to wish you a happy new year and trust you had a wonderful festive period. Now, we're live across the UK, indeed, we're live across the world for tonight's Solomon Live, which is our first of 2022. Now, my name is Brodie. I'm the Provincial Communications Officer for the distinguished province of Worcestershire, and it's my job every month to conduct these lively conversations of Freemasonry. But if you do have any questions that you would like to submit to our very special guest this evening, you can do that via the question and answer feature on Zoom, and I'll do my very best to get to as many of them as I possibly can. So without any further ado, our Solomon Live this evening is Communicating Freemasonry with UGLE Director of Communications and Marketing, Michelle Worvell. Michelle, how are you?
I'm fine, Brodie. How are you?
Very, very good. And I have to say, so many people excited about you joining our Solomon Live this evening. And I can kind of understand why, because communications affects every element of Freemasonry. So let's get to that in a few minutes. But what I thought we could do, because you've been in the role for 3 years now, so I thought we could get to know you a little bit more. So perhaps, Michelle, tell me something that many people on this Zoom call don't know about you.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess some people will know this, but maybe many people don't. But the strangest thing that I do is Civil War reenactments. So I've been doing that for about 20 odd years. So English Civil War, so Cromwell and Charles I, not jousting. As a lot of people ask me, although there are female jousters. So I've been a musketeer. I have a shotgun license. I could never hold up a bank with the thing because it takes about 4 minutes to load, but it's a replica musket from that period. So yeah, I've been doing that for about 20 years. So yeah, a long time. So that's
well, fair play. I bet you have a lot of fun doing that, which is of course what Freemasonry is all about. So let's go back 3 years then. It's coming up to 3 years, isn't it, that you've been in?
Yeah, March.
What made you join Freemasonry in the first place? What was it that made you think, I want to join that organisation?
Yeah, so I was sort of looking to move roles, and I saw the job advert, and initially it was just like the United Grand Lodge of England, and I thought, oh, is that the Freemasons? So I sort of, read it up, and I sort of Googled it and looked into it. And when I was at university, I'd read like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, those sorts of books. So I had a lot of preconceptions around Freemasonry. But I was sort of really intrigued. I just thought it was a really unique opportunity. A lot of my background has been in sort of membership or professional bodies. So I thought I would, contact them and see what the deal was. So and it sort of went on from there, really.
And what was it like in those first months when you joined? I mean, was it a daunting task? Because obviously, given the historic perception of Freemasonry, there was a bit of work to be done. What was it like in those first few months?
Yeah, so I came from sort of insurance, which is a lot more straightforward, but sort of same sort of demographic. It was the same sort of size of organisation. So there was a lot of similarities in my sort of previous role and the areas of communications I was dealing with at the Chartered Insurance Institute. But obviously, what's unique about Freemasonry is these sort of the parallel between the business side of Freemasons Hall, United Grand Lodge of England. And then the sort of heart of Freemasonry. So what I think can be sort of quite confusing initially is that you come in and you've got to learn both sides. You've got to learn about who the rulers are and all of the ranks and how that all sort of fits in. So that's a lot to get your head around. As a result of that, I have someone who does internal communications and staff communications, and we created last year a welcome pack for staff, which explains, the breakdown of how everything works, all the acronyms, the phrases, just to give people a bit more of a head start than what I did. Luckily, there's lots of experienced people, staff and volunteers. I'm very lucky to have Sean Butler in the team, who's a Mason and Dean at the time.
Oh, he's all right, isn't he? He's all right.
Yeah, last surviving member, original member. And he was great as well. So I always had that. I've got the Comms and Marketing Working Party group. I've got David Staples, Ian Chandler, who runs the Comms and Marketing Working Party. So there was lots of people that I could ask. But yeah, it is quite sort of mind-boggling. But also there was just so much what intrigued me and made me want the job is the potential. It's all there. It's just that we haven't done the best for our sort of selves over the years in terms of communicating what we do. So I think that was a very exciting challenge, and still is 3 years later.
Well, it's a job, isn't it, where you can come in and make your mark, and you've actually done that. And I think everybody who knows you and has got an element of knowledge about communications can see that. So when you first came in, a blank canvas essentially, what did you think needed to be done first of all?
I think the very first thing for me was, like you say, learn, like I said earlier, about learning about, the organisation. What you don't want to do is obviously throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a lot of good practice that goes in there, or things that you can enhance. So it was, taking a breath, taking a look around, getting to know my fellow directors, getting to meet members, the lie of the land. But also, there was a complete restructure of the team, because what I've done and what is still in place today, which I hopefully think really works, is that I broke it down into areas of expertise. So PR, internal communications, corporate communications, marketing, membership communications. What else have I got? Did I say PR, social media? So what I wanted was like experts in each of those fields. And then when we do big campaigns like the Armed Forces Covenant, then we take all that expertise and do it across one big campaign. So it was putting that structure in place. And I've been really lucky to have the team I've got, and I don't do these results myself. This is a massive sort of like team effort on behalf of everyone in my team. So I think getting that foundation in place was really important, and then allowed us sort of like to build on the success and give me the confidence to sort of think of the strategic stuff, but to let like my managers and my execs do the operational part of the business. So that's what I was doing, and then I started looking for opportunities where we could enhance ourselves, and we may talk about it later, but I think the biggest one was public relations. So we were very reactive. So if a journalist contacted us, usually with something negative, we would answer their queries. We might be a little bit defensive, in our tone, but that's just been completely turned on its head. So it's about us being proactive, us going out there, us creating the opportunities and building relationships with journalists. And we've really seen, a massive increase, in our PR coverage, because, we've taken control of the narrative. So one of the biggest issues was people were talking about what they thought we were rather than what we were. So it was taking that control back.
So we've got a lot to talk about. Media, we're going to break this down to lots of different stages, but let's talk about some of your highlights over the last 3 years, because there's been plenty.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you think so. Tell me if I know, I'll talk a bit louder. It's I think some of the highlights for me were there was already the PCO network in place. But it was a little bit sporadic, but what we did, I wanted to, even that out, give, fair sort of opportunity and help to all of the PCOs. So I think we've really enhanced that network, which has paid like huge dividends for us in terms of, what the PCOs have been able to do, and hopefully the support we've given them with like toolkits and webinars, media ambassador training, all that sort of stuff. So I think what you put in, you get back. And I think that's been paid back, sort of threefold with the work of the provincial communications officers. A highlight for me was Open House London. So we took that over from the museum, and we went from being the second most popular venue in Camden to the second most popular venue in London after the office, with just one event. So we completely turned that on its head, and the way in which we presented it. And that was just a massive boost, because not only was it great to hear all these people coming in and coming back out the door and talking about how great it was we'd opened the doors, they could speak to all these Freemasons, but also the Freemasons themselves just being so proud. And, we're thankful to Met, because they provide, the volunteers. And one guy didn't want to leave the front door. They were supposed to, but he absolutely refused. He said, don't even try to move me off this rota, because he just loved being out there and pulling these people in. And I think we had, I can't remember the figure now. Is it like 8,000, through the doors instead of 3,000? So that was great, and it was just it was great for UGLE, the Masons, the public. So I really loved that, and seeing that sort of enhancement. And also it helps bust the myths about the fact that we're behind closed doors and we're not open. It's like, well, we open up, we're open anyway, but then as being part of Open House London allows us to sit under that umbrella. The National Digital Marketing Campaign was a calculated risk, but I think has really paid off. We've obviously launched a new external website at the end of last year, so everybody's hopefully seen that. And I think the Armed Forces Covenant project, it was something I'd wanted to do when I came into UGLE, but I think that has sort of exceeded expectations in the sense of how the provinces have really sort of bought into it, and ties back to our military background and our sort of our origins, for a lot of our membership. So I think that's sort of like coming home and sort of bringing that back into the spotlight, that area. So and that's ongoing, and that will continue, and more provinces are signing the Armed Forces Covenant. So I've been really pleased with the way that's worked out.
Oh, it's wonderful, and Worcestershire is going to be signing the Armed Forces Covenant in January. I know lots of other provinces have been doing that. And interesting what you were saying about the open house as well. I'd recommend anybody to go and visit that place, Mason or non-Mason alike. But let's talk about, because we've got to talk about this. So you've been in the role for 3 years. Anything not going according to plan, would you say? I mean, rumour has it about there's been a bit of a pandemic going on.
Well, yes, that wasn't part of the plan, obviously. So year one was about 7 months, because I started in March. That was just getting like my foundations in order, and then year two was supposed to be about putting these projects in place, and that more or less completely fell by the wayside because it all went into COVID. So suddenly. And I think Sean went from, to put it in context, Sean went from sending out 97 membership communications the year before COVID to 297 membership communications. And it's really important to us. It's not just about the public. It's, how we sort of communicate, to the membership, and making sure that, they shouldn't be confused about what we're doing or what the guidance is. So I think, really proud of that. We obviously, the COVID response group was set up. So we worked very closely with them on the PR. And I sort of hate to say it, but actually in terms of perception, that really increased our PR so much.
It did, yeah.
It's stuff that Masons do day in, day out in terms of charity, but it was then obviously really concentrated into COVID. And there was, I know what great work we do, but I knew, people that were driving PPI for free across the country to get to companies that had run out of PPE. And there was a chemist who donated, who was a Mason, thousands of antiseptic wipes for free. It was just absolutely astounding, the response, which was on top of all the charity stuff that, the provinces and Masons already do. So it was unexpected, but I think the team sort of coped really well with it and sort of used, that situation. It sounds horrible to say it, but in a way to showcase what Freemasonry really is all about. And I think that was a massive eye opener for the public, seeing that.
No, absolutely. I mean, nobody wants the pandemic. Nobody still wants it, but it was an opportunity, wasn't it, to show what we naturally do, what we're all about. And a lot of people want to know the answer to this, Michelle. As you can imagine, I should imagine you do get asked this on a regular basis. So, for example, Susan Thorburn, thank you ever so much indeed for submitting your message to us. She says, "Is Michelle actually a Lady Mason? If not, has doing this job made her interested in joining?" Spill the beans.
Well, yeah, that is one of the questions I get asked a lot. I said when I got asked that in my interview, actually, would you become a Mason? And we actually then asked that of everybody that we interview as well, funnily enough. And what I'd always said was I didn't want to even think about it for the first sort of, 18 months or so, because I wanted to have that sort of outsider looking in. I wanted to have that distance and look at it in that way before I got sort of too involved on the other side of it. But yeah, I have had conversations with both the sort of ladies groups, I think in casually, but I've not quite taken the step yet. My excuse will be I've been really busy, but yes, it's definitely on the cards.
Oh, that's something to look forward to. Great question, Susan. Thank you for submitting. Now, when it comes to the structure of UGLE comms, and indeed comms all over the country, we need to talk about that, because we've got PCOs who are joining us this evening, of which I'm one. You'll have Masons joining us and non-Masons alike. So let's talk about the UGLE comms structure. So we've got the working party, PCOs. How does all that work, Michelle? Perhaps you go through that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in the senior management team. So I'm one of, I think, gosh, I should know, about 10 directors that report directly into David Staples, the Grand Secretary and the CEO. There are 2 working parties. There's a membership working party, and there is a communications and marketing working party. That is run by Ian Chandler, who's the provincial Grand Master for Surrey. And we have the regional communication group system. So on both those working parties, so there is a representative from each RCG that sits on that panel. And they are there to give me sort of feedback, advice. We talk about strategy together. They're fantastic, really supportive group. And they're always there, when I need them. They've been great. So when they then take that information and then they filter it down to their RCGs and the other provincial Grand Masters, and then that information filters back up the other way. So it's a great channel for me, just to sense check any sort of ideas and strategy. I have the PCO network, so that's my sort of extended team, for want of a better word, in terms of not my team, but a team. And there's obviously one for each province.
So that's a provincial communications officer, if anybody's not familiar with that term.
Correct. And they are also now in RCG groups. And the idea behind that, we've got WhatsApp groups. We've actually got a PCO forum coming up in a couple of weeks where we bring everybody together. It's really helpful for new members, but it helps them to network. We do training, and there's just so much, best practice or good practice out there, so we might get somebody come up with a great idea on RCG 9, and then we can sort of spread that across. Or if someone in RCG 1 has done a great radio interview or a television interview or got a great bit of PR, then we spread that across the other groups. So it's all about sort of trying to work together as a cohesive unit. So we wouldn't be able to do the things that we do, without them. And then there's obviously the core team, communication and marketing team at UGLE, which I can run through if you like, but and tell you who's on that. But
well, one of the interesting things for any Freemason, and once again using that term non-Masons alike, is David Staples, Dr. David Staples, Chief Executive, Grand Secretary. He seems to be the face of Freemasonry. When it comes to the big interviews, what kind of working relationship do you have with him?
Well, do you know, one of the things when I was looking for a new job, what I wanted was at the last place, there was somebody in between me and the CEO. And I felt that really didn't work, because when you're in like communications and PR, it's really important to have a close working relationship with the CEO. Something else that often trips up, PR people is having a CEO who doesn't, understand the media, isn't sort of a very good sort of spokesperson. So I was really looking to work with somebody who sort of understood the importance of communications, and would be that sort of good spokesperson. And when I came in for my interview, for sort of like David had like chemistry interviews first, because he also, felt the sort of same way. We just sort of hit it off straight away. So that there was already, that there. So I think we thought, we could really work with each other. So I think that was really important to me, to have that direct line. And as we all know, and anyone that's seen David, on the press or in BBC, Sky, etc., he's just such a fantastic spokesperson. Also, nothing really phases him, which is great. He's very good at sort of thinking on his feet. And so, he's just a great person to work with from a comms point of view. And we're lucky to have someone, who's so sort of comfortable with the media and is very good about talking about Freemasonry.
He does seem very at home doing it, doesn't he? And by the way, look, plug, make sure you track down our first ever Solomon Live with our Chief Executive and Grand Secretary, available for you to watch on the UGLE YouTube channel and also on Solomon Live as well. Back to the screen, just a quick question here, actually. And it's Hemant, he wants to know, do you have any Masons within the family? As we spoke about, you're not a Mason at the moment. Any Masonic connections when you dig deep?
Well, yeah, it's funny you should say that, actually. So years ago, and I need to get my mum to dig it back out again, she's a New Zealander. And she'd come home from her mother's funeral in Christchurch. And one thing she'd been given was a letter from her father's great-grandfather, I think it was. And he was actually Irish. So I guess there's that other joke about there's always an Irish connection in the family as well. So I think Freemasonry is probably the same. So he left Ireland because of the potato famine, and he went to the North Island in New Zealand, and he became a Freemason.
Wow.
So this was before I even went for the job, and it was only afterwards I remembered it. And I keep saying to her, can you dig that letter out? Because he wrote like a little essay about his life and how he'd gone from Ireland to New Zealand. So yes, there is a Freemason in the family. I just need to get my mum to dig out that letter. I mean, one of the things we're looking at the moment, the museum has a little computer screen where you can go in and do it, but we're looking at enhancing that. So there's something in the cafe with touch screen, so we can encourage members of the public to come in and find that Freemason in the family. But yes.
Oh, that's a great idea, isn't it? Fantastic. Reality check time then, Michelle. So let's talk about where we are in the world of Freemasonry, because you often use the term, don't you, turning the oil tanker. How far do you think it's turned? Where are we in January 2022, would you say?
Very good question. If we were turning it 100 degrees, I would say maybe 45 sort of degrees. I think, like I said, we've seen a huge increase in our PR. We've seen very strong relationships with national press journalists, which we never had before. I could talk a little bit about the CT research, which I think is a big sort of game changer. And hopefully, like I said, it's not just about public relations, it's about members as well. So hopefully they're feeling a little bit more confident because of the work we've done about speaking to people about their Freemasonry. I know when I sort of tell people what I do, and of course the preconceptions come out, but when I talk to them about it, they say, oh, I didn't realize that, and that's really interesting. And so I think if people can be sort of confident about talking about it, I think we've seen that as well. And hopefully with the National Digital Marketing Campaign, we're seeing a sort of renewed interest in people joining us. So it's definitely turning, but there is a long way to go. And like I said, it's all about taking back that narrative and us talking about what we really do, rather than people having preconceptions. One of the indicators, an interesting one, was in the COVID period. David said that all his previous interviews he'd done, before we'd sort of really started this work, he always got asked nepotism, sort of against women, handshakes, trouser legs. They were in every single interview he did. But he said during COVID, he could do whole interviews and they were never even mentioned, or only one of them was mentioned. So even silly things like that, where, it was the only thing people thought about us. And then because we're talking more about what we do, they're not concentrating on that sort of like the old stuff that always comes up. But I think the real indicator was a company did some research just before I joined, and they checked something called net favorability. So I think there was about sort of 3,000 people across all different age groups and sexes and demographics that were asked a series of questions about Freemasonry, and one of them was, what do you feel about Freemasonry? And you measure how positively and negatively. And we gave them indicators with other groups. So everything from, the church to, groups that we knew would be viewed positively, and ones like the Illuminati or cults and stuff like that wouldn't be. And Freemasonry's net favourability was -27. So if you've got the scale in the middle of neutral, plus and below, so that was pretty bad. And we were below cults, which is obviously not great. So and that research is being done repeated with that same type of demographic, not the same people, but the same demographic every 2 years. And in March last year, when we redid it, we'd moved from -27 to -2. So that was a huge leap of 25 points, not just a couple, 25. That is massive to go have that big leap. So I think that's the one stat I think that really shows how that oil tanker is turning, that there's been such a huge leap in people that don't think about us in such a negative way the minute they hear our name anymore.
Well, you've just alluded to it. There's still lots of work to be done, but that's good, isn't it? That's a very positive thing. But let's talk about, Michelle, detractors. There are those within Freemasonry who think we shouldn't be telling the world what we're doing. We need to keep it close to our chest. It's a very mythical thing, isn't it? And there's a lot of mystery attached to it, and you're giving the game away essentially without revealing any secrets. That's what some people would say. Well, what would you have to say to those detractors?
I actually completely respect, that view. The way in which I look at it is, I think, for want of a better term, so excuse me, but I think Freemasonry was marketed or sold to people in different ways, across the generations. I remember having a conversation with someone in the museum who said, before the World Wars, it was very open. People talked about it all the time. Way more open in some ways than maybe it is today. And then at some point during the wars, it was obviously went a little bit sort of, not underground, but, it's just sort of a bit of a step backwards. And then, a lot of the members we have today, they were sort of, it was about waiting to be asked, and that's just the way it was. So I think they've, completely within their rights to sort of think, what's happened here. This isn't the way the Freemasonry we were introduced to. I believe we're just sort of taking it back to sort of where it was before. And there's nothing wrong with, someone, asking you or thinking, you have a friend who you think would be a great Mason. That's fantastic. But also, we don't want to block people coming to us. So the example I often give is my friend in the Sealed Knot, who there was actually 3 Freemasons within our small group. And he sort of knew they were Masons, but because of the perception around it, he was waiting to be asked. So, this went on for about 5-6 years. And then I got the job at Freemasons Hall, and he said, look, I've been really interested. No one's ever spoken to me about it. I assume I'm not good enough. And I said, no, there's an interested in joining section on our website. And, I introduced him to Dean in my team at the time, and he introduced him to his lodge. And he's absolutely flying. He absolutely loves it. But we didn't have a Mason for 5 years because he was waiting to be asked, and nobody spoke to him about it. He's just he loves it. He's just done his second initiation. He texted me afterwards and said he's buzzing about it. So we don't want to lose that opportunity. The other funny thing I always remember is from the John Dickey book, where he tells a story about the guy.
Oh, we've had him as well. We've had him.
Oh, we had, yeah, after John, yeah. And there was someone who was taken in by the Inquisition, and he was asked about Freemasonry. And they said, what's with all this secrecy? Why all this sort of mystery about it? And he actually said, I can't remember the exact phrase, but almost like, well, it's a ploy to get people in, because they're so interested about what's been going on behind, closed doors. And that was like, I think, 1800s, that was going back all that time. So, I think, I don't want to knock anybody sort of, who that's the way they feel about their Masonry. But I think we also do need to understand that we don't want the Andys of this world who are not becoming Masons because nobody's asking them.
Yes, absolutely. And it's all about listening, isn't it? It's all about listening, which is the art of communication itself. Great question here from Emily. Now, we often say, well, we don't often say, we say every week that we've got people from all over the UK, from all over the world joining us. Case in point, Emily from California just says, what made members feel more comfortable talking about Freemasonry? We're working on the same thing in California, because that's one of the goals, isn't it, for Freemasons to feel that they can disclose their membership and feel very happy about doing that. What would you say has helped with that, Michelle? You kind of touched on a lot of that already.
Yeah, I think what you don't want, what we had was people worried that if they, I speak to all different, some people, actively speak about it. Some people never speak about it. Some people are happy to speak about it if they're asked and it comes up in conversation. Some people might have had a bad experience of it once and then they don't want to bring it up again. One of the ways in which hopefully we've helped is it's a horrible corporate phrase, but strategic narratives. So giving people another horrible corporate phrase, but an elevator pitch. So if you were stuck in an elevator with somebody, or lift in the UK, and you had to explain Freemasonry in 30 seconds, how would you do that? So that's one of the things that we've been working on. Because, yes, Freemasonry means different things to different people, but it's using those sort of 4 words, isn't it? Integrity, friendship, charity, respect. Now, it may be that, you're more into the friendship element or you're more into the charity element. So it's telling your own story, but within that framework, but also not feeling that, the organisation's not supporting you from a public perception point of view. So you can have those conversations and you can have that framework to talk about Masonry and not feel that you're going to be attacked the minute you talk about it. So I think it's sort of, getting support from, communications on national level, and then also sort of feeling confident to speak about, Freemasonry yourself. And why shouldn't you be? You should be extremely proud to talk about it. There's no reason why you shouldn't want to do that.
Well, it's exactly that, isn't it? It's something to be incredibly proud of, not the other way around. Now let's get up to date if we can. Let's talk about the National Digital Marketing Campaign, and we need to discuss what that is for those who don't know what it is, and then we need to discuss the success of it because it's been very well received, isn't it? Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so the idea behind that was obviously communication is moving, the whole time. And, with all the best will in the world, whether we go back to when telegrams were invented or carrier pigeons or the postal system, at some point we've had these huge leaps in communication, haven't we? And, we wouldn't have, maybe the whole thought of the national postal system would have been horrifying to, somebody, I don't know, in the old days. So obviously the big leap in the last couple of decades has been via social media. And what we need to be, aware of is that, the new generation of Masons will communicate and assimilate information in different ways. So for example, I really like Facebook, but I'm not very good at Instagram. And, then there's TikTok, which, at 46 already feels far too trendy for me. So, it just moves on the whole time. And in the same way that sometimes I help my parents with really basic stuff to do with technology, I'm sure in 20 years' time, my 7-year-old will be tutting and doing the same with me when there's another new, communication tool. So we have to move with the times and use those communication tools. And that's just adding it to our arsenal. That's not, again, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's just making sure that we reach those people, because if we don't use social media, we would never reach them. So the National Digital Marketing Campaign is a way of targeting people from 18, actually up to 65 onwards with Facebook. I think they, there's a funny video that I haven't shown for ages. I annoy my team with, but it's a millennial being interviewed by an older person. And he says, "Oh, should we do some work on Facebook?" And she says, "Oh, Facebook's for old people like my parents."
Stone age, that is.
Yeah, so anyway, Facebook is a good one. It's got very good analytical targeting or demographic targeting in the back end. So it's a one it's affordable. It's very easy on the targeting. So we decided to dip our toe in the water with that. And our original not a huge budget. Our original aim was to generate 5,000 Facebook membership inquiries. The campaign ran for 93 days in total, from the 22nd of September till the 22nd of December. And actually, we generated nearly 9,000 membership inquiries. So we exceeded our target by 78%. We generated nearly 3,500 total membership leads. So they're actually people that filled in the interested in joining form. That form then went out to the provinces, to the membership teams. So that's going to take some time, as we know, to get to initiation stage. But we've already had some initiates from the National Digital Marketing Campaign. 95% of them came through a mobile device. So again, that shows, you know, the technology that people are using to sort of view these campaigns. And 66% of the inquiries were for the ages of 25 to 44. So that was the sort of, even though we went from 18 to 65 plus, that was the bulk of the demographic. And so far, 39% of the inquiries have become leads. Wow. So that's a lot of figures all at once, but that's been extremely successful. And then we did a little mini campaign based off of the Armed Forces Covenant with for the military. So we did a little mini sort of campaign on that. So so we felt, in terms of a first stab at you know, attracting members through Facebook and a digital campaign, that's been hugely successful. And that's something that we're looking to extend and target groups either by age, by specialism, rugby, football, the motorcycle groups, you know, things like that. So hopefully we extend it. We don't want to overdo it, because you can go the opposite way with it, but we're looking at probably a couple of times a year. And also, it's not just that. I think it was 1 million people had actually seen the adverts. So even if they didn't become Masons, if you think about that CT research, hopefully then if people say, do you know about the Masons? They would have said, yes, I've seen that advert, and they wouldn't have been expecting us to put adverts on there. There was one funny comment where it came up on Facebook, and this lady said, oh yeah, I'm going to be the first female, you know, Mason. And I said, I'm really sorry. There, Karen, but unfortunately we've had female Freemasons for hundreds of years, so
yeah, missed the boat on that one.
Yeah.
What would you do differently then with the National Digital Marketing Campaign? Because as you've just said, it has been successful this time around. It's raised awareness. It's been great for recruitment. What would you do differently in the future then?
I think you know, there was a lot of targeted guesswork because we'd never done it before. I think we did the best we could with it, but I think we started off with 9 adverts initially, because with all different types and different demographics, and then we sort of drilled that down, so we were able to test. And that's a great thing about Facebook: if something doesn't work, you just switch it off instantaneously. So we actually got down to 1 advert that worked really well. So we started with 9. So we thought the testimonial one would work really, really well, but it didn't. We did a quote from one of the national newspapers, because we thought the halo effect of having a national newspaper would work. It died a death. No, everyone hated that one. So I think we've got a lot of outputs and learnings from that we can be even more sophisticated with further campaigns. But we had to go through that test phase just to see what worked and what didn't work. And we're really thankful to the Masons who, you know, put themselves out there and were photographed, you know, as part of that campaign, because that's a big ask, you know, to have your face plastered all over Facebook. So yeah, but yes, there was a lot of testing involved.
And let's talk about Royal Arch now, because this is very exciting for anybody who's a Royal Arch member, and potentially if you go to join in the future. Now, a lot of work is underway to promote Royal Arch. Give us an update where we are with Archway, because I should add, next month Patrick Penny will be joining us on Solomon Live to talk about that. But perhaps you can give us an early tease.
Yeah, so I thought when I first came in, I sort of asked about the Royal Arch, and I was trying to get my head around that. And a figure that really stuck in my head was the fact that I think, sorry, I should know that, like, you know, 30, maybe 40% of Masons are Royal Arch, and they don't move on. And I remember the Duke of Kent, the Grand Master, he had spoken about how members should really, you know, join the Royal Arch before they join any other sort of like orders. And I just really wanted to understand, you know, why that wasn't happening, you know, why people weren't taking that step. Also, before my time, there was research that showed that any member that had multiple memberships was much more likely to stay in Freemasonry than someone just had a single membership. So I had, you know, a great deal of interest in sort of delving into that and working out, why people weren't moving into it, the fact that we weren't internally marketing, the Royal Arch and encouraging people to join, because the people who are in it love it. But there's just not that sort of, conversion across from the craft into the Royal Arch. So I've been really lucky working with Stephen Tucker and Patrick Penny, Michael Holland also. So there's 2 groups now, which are sort of proactively looking into this. I must say Sean Butler's done, a lot of the work on this with them. And we've done a couple of surveys asking people, why they haven't joined the Royal Arch or why they have joined the Royal Arch, just to really delve into, what's working and how we can, market that more and get more people joining the Royal Arch. We're also looking at creating Royal Arch or working more closely with Royal Arch communications officers as well, so they can also promote the Royal Arch. And when we do the members sites, there will be a whole section on that there as well. So I think it's really exciting. We've moved it along quite a lot last year, but I think there'll be, even more better things to come this year on the Royal Arch. So watch this.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? And it's exciting times ahead. And I received a survey, I think it was just before Christmas, that I filled in, by the way. So hopefully all of those surveys combined together will deliver some exciting times. But as I just mentioned, next month, Solomon Live, very excited if you'd like to find out more about that. Michelle, a lot of people would like to know this. What can we expect from UGLE Comms over the next 12 months or so? Because a lot of people have come up with that question, various different forms, including Mark Quigley and also John Chapman. Different forms are asking the same thing, really. What can we expect in the next year, would you say?
Well, I hope none of my team are listening, but loads more work for my team, basically. That's what we'll be doing. So like I said, there were some things that got held up, with COVID. I think the big one for 2022 is starting work on the new membership website. So I was sort of really surprised when I came into UGLE that an organisation with 200,000 members did not have a members area. So there's so many things that we can do with that, and rather than just having, the first rising was a big leap for us. So when I joined, comms couldn't directly contact individual members. It went through the bugle, so that was great. And the open rate on first rising is over 40%, which is way above the industry average. But the idea behind the members site is we'll have sections for Royal Arch, almoners, charity stewards, new initiates. We'll know if they're a new member, and it will be very sort of personalized. It will ping a Delphi. So when you go in, it will surface content for you and say, we know you're an almoner. Did you know that there's a new article on this, or something's come out in FMT? So it'll be a really nice sort of like personal experience. So that is a big and quite complex project, but I'm really excited about that. We'll do a couple more marketing campaigns, hopefully, and delve more into that. It's been on the back burner for a little bit, but district communications officers. So there's a couple of, really good ones, but we need to sort of formalise that into a proper network and provide more support for them. So that's at the top of the agenda. And I've done a little bit of work, and I'll be working with James Hilditch and his group on the university scheme. So again, there's a huge growth opportunity there in terms of sort of like marketing, the university scheme and the way in which we sort of communicate to them, and moving them from when they're at university and when they do it for 3 years, and when we sometimes lose them when they sort of move home or move to a job. So just making sure they stay active, within Freemasonry with more proactive comms. So I think that's a nice, exciting one as well.
Absolutely. And final word, because I think this is a great one, actually. Joseph Van Nam. Hopefully I pronounced your surname correctly, Joseph. Forgive me if I haven't. He said, what is the one thing individual lodges can do to improve their communication? Because we've got you lot up there doing a great job, haven't we? And we've got the provinces doing great work as well, hopefully. What's the one thing lodges can do as well to celebrate the work that's been done?
Yes, I think when I joined, one of the things I was said was it wasn't always communication between the centre and the provinces. I actually never found that. I was always really sort of lucky, but not really lucky. I just didn't find that. I found people were really helpful. The PGMs are really helpful. But then interestingly, I found out that then they sometimes felt that they struggle with the communications to the lodge, and it's probably vice versa. So it goes all the way down and then all the way back up again. So one of the things that we have done is if you haven't seen them, we've created toolkits. That did stall a little bit. We'll be creating more this year. But they're sort of available. They're on our brand centre. All of the PCOs have them. So they're encouraged to put them on your own member sites or email them out or reference them in their provincial newsletters. So that's social media, PR, online members guides, stuff like that. So that's the lodges should be able to pick them up and read them and find them useful. And also we've got an exciting new project, a communications academy, which Sean Butler's in charge of. So he's come up with this great plan to sort of come out to the provinces and do the comms academy, where you can sort of train people up and give them advice. So we're just looking to sort of disseminate that sort of skill set that we've got and how that can be used at lodge level, because we're really aware you might be lucky and have someone like you that's got a skill set in comms anyway, or it might be somebody who hasn't got a clue about how to do comms. So I will promise that the centre, and I know the PCOs will do their best to sort of like work with the lodges, but you've got these toolkits, and this year we will be launching the comms academy, which hopefully will help the lodges as well.
Michelle, brilliant answers. We had many more questions to get through, but time is against us. We'll need to invite you back on Solomon Live, but have you enjoyed your Solomon Live experience?
I have very much. You put me under pressure at times, but yes, I guess that's what hopefully my skill as a communicator should be able to handle them. So yes, it's been very pleasurable, and I think I might, we could sort of keep you as a PCO. Because you've not been too mean to me. So,
Michelle, thank you so much for joining us this evening, ladies and gentlemen and brethren. Our next Solomon Live will be on Tuesday, the 22nd of February, and as I mentioned already, the topic will be Archway: Your Royal Arts Journey. An interview with excellent companion Patrick Penny, Second Metropolitan Grand Principal. So put that in your diary. But as always, we're not letting you forget. 7:30 Tuesday, the 22nd of February, and if you haven't done it already, why not? If you get 5 minutes later on, go and check out Solomon, solomon.ugle.org.uk. So many great things on there. Superb content to advance your daily advancement in Masonic knowledge. Until February, Happy New Year, and we'll see you next time. Take care.